It's actually quite funny that Far Cry as a series became very popular after uttering the statement, "The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result." A line that was said by the wonderful villain Voss in Far Cry 3. And here we have another Far Cry game that, much like its predecessors, is very much the same thing over and over again. Let's cut to the chase and get right into it. So, for anybody that knows me, knows that Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3, and even smallish to a degree, Far Cry 4, I really liked those games quite a bit. I had a lot of fun with them. They had fairly good stories and fairly well written characters in them. They each had their own little downfalls here and there that prevented them from being perfect games. But, for the most part, these games are cherished among the community, still to this day. And there's a good reason for it. Wonderful writing, great villains, wonderful characters, fantastic settings. Everything that you can sit there and think of, the game just checks it off on a checklist. And ever since then, the game has done a great job of doing the same thing, using that same checklist and just checking off things. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to sit there and say that there isn't heart or value in this game as any more than there was in Far Cry 5 or Primal or any other ones. The problem here is that it doesn't do much more to separate itself from those previous titles. Now, while I get that New Dawn isn't really meant to be a straight-up new title, it's really supposed to be a continuation and a standalone DLC per se of Far Cry 5, the reality is that we're still so far ahead, and it's been years now. It's been 7 years now since we got Far Cry 3. We just can't seem to break free from that formula. Where Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3 are very different, they're still very successful for a reason. And part of it is because of the things that they did right, that they mirror from each other, as well as the things that they did very different from each other. Graphically, the game is gorgeous. Honestly, the lighting, the shadow effects, storms, dust effects, everything, fog, it's really well done. Honestly, it's one of the best looking Far Cry games to date. I didn't get a chance to play 5, and really it was more because it was just a Far Cry game minus the towers. I heard it had, some solid writing and some good characters, but the biggest issue that any Far Cry game has really just stems from the fact that it tries to do too many things. And while it does them alright, or even sometimes good, the reality is it burdens it. It bloats it. And some people have deemed it and coined it the ubification of things. As Jim Sterling has put, where it's an open world just filled with filler content. And that's the biggest issue. It takes away from this beautiful world is the fact that there's just too much of it. And one really good example of that, the fact that there's way too much of it, is the underwater parts. Where in other games, whether it was Far Cry 3 or Far Cry 4, you had stuff that was hidden underwater, whether it was loot boxes or if it was relics or some type of collectible. There were multiple things that made it where you wanted to go into the water. But here, you want to avoid the water at all costs because A, there's nothing in there other than fish that want to bite your ass off. And that's it. Really, the only reason why you'll ever be in the water is to get across it to another spot of land. And it just feels a little wasted, especially since obviously it is populated with fish. You have a fishing mechanic, and there's even boats. There's even islands that you can take over. That have forts on them. You would think that they would somewhat put something or fill it to a certain degree with other stuff. And it could have been a lack of timing, just because obviously this standalone DLC, this standalone game, does take place a year after Far Cry 5, so it's very much possible that they just didn't have enough time to do that. But it shows. Now, where for the most part graphically the game looks good, cutscenes tend to look fairly decent, especially with a lot of the close-ups. You can see a lot of emotion and a good range of different things that they're trying to go for. However, when it's not in a cutscene, facial animations seem to kind of trot off a little bit, where some of them look a little stiff almost. And and it's noticeable too, because when you have a particular cutscene with maybe a particular character that either is like really intense or really interesting, and then to have that kind of back out of that and make it where you can walk around again and play again, but they're still talking, it's like almost night and day. Like, yes, they nailed the part where they're up close in your face. They didn't translate that into anything else. And like I said, when you're standing there listening to somebody talk and you can see the mouth and the words and the face, it doesn't quite match up the same. Like, it's not Mass Effect Andromeda bad, but at the same time, it's just, compared to other games that have even just come out this last weekend, it's kind of noticeable. While the game graphically looks very good for the most part, the music and the choices of music that are in the game are strange at best. While there is a side mission that is actually fairly interesting to take up on, where you're trying to actually find MP3 players in a story type way to sit there and supposedly bring more music into the town and, of prosperity, it actually adds tunes on the radio as well. And that's cool. Actually, I actually like that idea. I didn't mind that. I don't know if Far Cry 5 did that, but I did like it here. However, most of the music is trap, rap, some country, and then like 50s and 60s music. And it just, nothing stuck with me. Every time I got into a vehicle that was blasting the radio, I immediately wanted to turn it off. I don't know what was going on with the soundtrack. There might be some people that love it. That's great. But compared to something like Forza Horizon 4 or even GTA 5 soundtracks, there's just nothing here that interests me at all. And it's just strange. And then to go a step further, some of the music, there's not a lot of music in the game that isn't from soundtracks or music played over the radio. More than likely it's so you can hear animals. More than likely it's so that way you can hear that music. However, it also makes it too where there's some parts that are just eerily silent with nothing but the crunching of grass under your feet. And don't get me wrong, I get it, there's a lot of Far Cry games that do that, but that doesn't mean that you need to keep doing that. So moving on from the music itself, audio-wise, whether it's voice acting or the sound of the guns, is actually really well done for the most part. I did enjoy most of that. However, there were some really goofy moments and bugs that I don't even think they were bugs, just certain things that they decided to go with that wound up being a lot more goofy than serious, like this.
They got me!
Which, interestingly enough, to me came off like a SpongeBob episode where they're like screaming, "My legs! I can't feel my legs!" And I can't, I was laughing for 5 minutes. I don't think that was intentional, but if it was, I mean, good on you, I guess, for having a sense of humor about it, but I don't know, it just kind of clashes with the more seriousness of Far Cry. Don't get me wrong, there is a sign of like goofiness and foolishness, but usually it's from the whacked out bad guys. It's not usually from your allies. So I guess it's taking it another step, I suppose. But other than that, really audio-wise, like I said before, it is pretty rock solid. So now we'll kind of get into like mission design per se. Missions, and this is something that like maybe they did in Far Cry 5 as well, and if they did, that's great. Maybe I will wind up eventually checking it out. They did a really great job of having more organic feeling missions. A good example of that is something like Skyrim or The Witcher 3, or even now the wonderful Metro Exodus that I can't actually wait to finish talking up about here later on this week. Missions that are, like I said, more organically given to you by like random passerbys or notes that you find, or allies that you have that were out exploring in the wilderness will come back and say, "Hey, I heard about this thing, maybe you should go check it out."
Don't let Eden hoodwink. Eric's telling everyone he's on a path of vengeance. I don't know what he's talking about, but I do know that he's good in a fight. I saw him chasing a group of highwaymen near a cave down that way. You should go introduce yourself.
And it's nice to sit there and be able to wander the forests and to be able to, go back to home base, talk to people, and have them bring this up. And like I said, it's enjoyable. That's something that I feel like, even with the Ubification of everything, I feel like that is really well done. And I do praise Ubisoft for that. They did a really good job with this, and I would like to see you guys continue doing more of that. Make more side missions like that. Make more things like that. Learn lessons from Skyrim and from, The Witcher 3 and Metro Exodus, because some of their best writing, believe it or not, is their organic, side quests, not even just their main mission. Their main missions are good, or even great, but their side missions, especially the ones that they just handcraft and they really do well writing in, and it's just not filler stuff. Like, there's filler stuff in this game, but this isn't it. Like I said, whether it's recruiting allies or going on side missions or finding loot, finding treasures and stuff like that, you'll just get organically from people that you talk to, in the forest or, at home base or wherever, and that feels good. I like that a lot. It made me want to go check these things out when somebody sits there and is telling me a tale about this treasure, and I'm able to go to wherever they're telling me that, hey, I heard about this treasure about so-and-so, yada, yada, yada. I want to go explore that. I want to go find out what happened.
I saw a bunch of highwaymen trying to break into and loot an old bunker. I always gave that place a wide berth. It smells like burnt hair. But if you want to try your luck, be my guest.
Another really good example of that too, having things more organic, is actually the loot crates. The crates that are dropped from the plane randomly at times, and it'll sit there and it'll say something about like a supply drop being, dropped off, and you can see the plane flying overhead. You can trace it and then actually see the package being dropped and parachuting to the ground. That was actually really cool. I did like that a lot. And where I feel like if you guys ever decided to go that route again or have something very similar, I'd kind of amp it up a little bit, because The Division I felt like did fairly well. And while I feel like it was a little too difficult, and some people might disagree with me on that, but where sometimes it felt a little bit too difficult was they had the supply drops in the Dark Zone, where you had to fight other people, other players, as well as fighting like really intense bullet sponge bosses. Now, I'm not saying you had to have bullet sponge bosses. However, you might every once in a while have like one or two people meet you at the supply drop. Even if you're like there immediately, you're standing there and you're like 12 meters away from the damn thing, you'll still have people walk up to you because they too saw it. But you guys can also add just a few more. Make it where you've got like a minute before like an entire truckload of guys show up, or make it where, make it more intense. You don't have to make it as hard as The Division per se, but definitely make it feel like, you better hurry up and pick this up because you got a lot of trouble coming. Because you might kill those one or two guys up, but nobody else shows up. Now, while you have a decent amount of customization, and thankfully a lot of it can be earned by taking out the posts, the guard posts and whatnot, the forts in the game, and actually doing what like I said, I don't know if it's in 5, but in here it's, you can scavenge the base, basically take everything out, let the baddies in, and take it back over with harder enemies, and you can try to retake the base to get more of a particular currency, ethanol, which is used to improve certain things, whether it's upgrading guns or it's upgrading other facilities, and you got it for, you need it for a few different things. And to be honest with you, scavenging and scuttling your forts and letting opponents take it back over and then taking on those harder opponents is the quickest and easiest way for you to actually gather ethanol. You'll, even doing it the first time around, you'll get 50 bonus just for scuttling it, for scavenging it. Then you'll get an additional 200 if you take it back over, and if you do it undetected or without any alarms, you'll get another 50 to 100 ethanol. And, I mean, you can rack up ethanol quickly. There's like, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 forts or so that you can do this to. And honestly, that's great. I mean, I like the fact that you can get customization stuff. You can sit there and get entire, like, you can get entire outfits by grinding these, these outposts. However, the issue here, and the thing that actually I was a bit offended by, and I know other people are too, and I know that some people have come to your defense, some people will agree with me, but what I didn't enjoy was the fact that there are Ubisoft coins in here that you can buy with real world money. Now, yes, it's just for customizations. There's nothing too horrendous. This isn't Odyssey, thank fuck on that. However, the fact that you put in like 40, 45 coins in these like what I was talking about earlier, these like little like loot areas that you get told about, well, that's partially kind of cool, so that way you can get certain weapons if you want a little earlier than normal, or you don't have to have the crafting parts, you can just use coins. There are going to be some people who might not see this video, or who might not, you know, like the fact that there is still that ability to sit there and use real world money to buy certain things that you should be able to only earn in-game. And so it's one of those fine line balances where I at least applaud you for not stuffing this game full of microtransactions like you did with Odyssey. However, it's still always going to be a problem. There are still people who are not cool with it. I'm one of them. So, on one hand, like I said, I have to at least praise you for at least not stuffing full of microtransactions. And to be honest with you, the microtransactions aren't that bad because, like I said, everything you can do, you can get in game. At the same time, it's just like, I guess it's just one of those things where it begs the question, why do it at all then? And that's really the biggest issue, you know, because really, like, if at least if you were selling a few customizations that were unique and they weren't too expensive, I think that'd be one thing. But to sell the ones in game means either people need to grind out these loot areas, these loot caves, whatever you want to call them, or they need to pony up the cash if there's a particular outfit that they want. And because that's the thing, is like some of the outfits, you can only grind and get them at particular outposts, and you'll have to do them 3 or 4 times in a row to get at all the pieces. So it sends somewhat mixed signals, because something that you're doing so right with the being able to scavenge and get more ethanol, as well as trying to get particular customizable items for your character, at the same time it's like 3 steps forward and that one little step and a half back, and it's just like, why? You're on the right track. You're this close. It's like Crackdown 3. Actually, you know what? To be fair, you guys are much better than Crackdown 3, but it's just close. So on to actually more of the story bits and the character bits. Characters here are, well, they're a little bland. I mean, if you play Far Cry 5, you'll enjoy most of what's in this game because a lot of the characters from Far Cry 5 are back in this game. And some of them you have to recruit as allies, some of them you'll meet eventually through story missions, and some of them you'll come across that you're like, I thought this person would be dead by now, and nope, here they are. They're hiding in the fucking forest. And to be honest with you, the story was well enough that I actually am thinking about maybe potentially just renting Far Cry 5 for a week and then checking it out. However, some of the newer characters, I believe they're newer characters, I guess I don't know, as well as your own character, are, well, they're lame. I mean, your character's a mute. What's up with that? You guys used to have fully fleshed out characters and character arcs and dialogue. Look, you know why Far Cry 3 and even Far Cry 2 are just so well beloved? Because your character communicates and talks and says things that's on their fucking mind, and they have character arcs while they're going through this insane thing that's happening right now. Whether it's, you know, like the mercenary in Far Cry 2, or the fucking rich kid who's watching his friends and family get torn apart by Voss and his fucking cronies. That's good. That was good stuff. And with each game, it's like you keep watering it down and making where they talk less and they do less, and they're just these fucking shells for you to like take a part of. And most of us will all agree that we'd rather have you have fleshed out characters that talk and have a voice, moreover, than not. It's harder to get into a character that just sits there when you're like yelling at the screen, no, this is what I mean. And they're like, well, you're not much of a talker. No, I'm a talker. This guy isn't. It makes it where I actually appreciate Anthem more, because at least with Anthem, your character talks and says things and has a fucking personality, even if it's as bland as white bread. You know, at least Wonder Bread has something. So it bothers me, and it bothers a lot of other people. I'm sure there are some people that'll defend it, but for the most part, we don't like it. So if you can at least take something from that, make our characters talk again. The twins aren't too bad as characters, and I feel like, you know, they were done well enough. But I mean, obviously, it's like them trying to kind of copy Voss, but it's two people basically. You know, you've got the one that threatens, and you got the one that's violent. I mean, it's just, they're all right, but they're not really the stars of the show. And when you see, if you've played 5, when you see who I'm talking about, you'll know what I mean when I say, actually, there's another character who's not even a villain, but they're the one who really steals the show. So speaking of actually allies, and, you know, and some of those other characters, one other really good thing that I have noticed that was different, because honestly, the last Far Cry I played was Far Cry 4, and I didn't even completely finish it, to be honest with you. But the one thing I did notice was, instead of having the 1 or 2 characters that you had in Far Cry 4, you know, or the handful, it wasn't very many, it was very few. Instead of having, you know, the handful of characters that you had in 4, you've got 8 characters here. And while there are some that are more interesting than others, and like I said, some of them return from Far Cry 5, what's really cool about them is the fact that they've actually got their own little perks. That the more kills that they commit, the more kills that they have, the more perks that they actually unlock, which I think is actually fairly dope. And I think that that's actually good. It's a step forward. I actually commend you guys for that, and I would like to see that more often. To be honest with you, you want to get me into another Far Cry game, that's a good step in the right direction. With some of the other things that I praised you on, plus this, yeah, keep doing more stuff like that. You know, because you guys, like I said, you guys are this close. It's like you guys hit such magic with Far Cry 3 that you just don't know how to redo it again without treading some of the same steps. And, you know, to sit there and see you guys branch out and do stuff like this, I think that's great. Whether it's, you know, there's one particular character that, you know, after he gets, I think it's like 10 kills or 15 kills or whatever, he makes it where, like, animals won't be as aggressive to you, you know, unless you attack them first. That's awesome. That makes it where I'm like, maybe I want to hang out with that guy for a bit, because I'm tired of getting attacked by fucking bears. You know, whatever the case is. That's cool. There's other perks too, like, you know, this, you know, particular character can show you where items are or where collectibles are that you might miss. That's fucking cool. So it's just, it makes it where you think a bit more about who you're hanging out with. And that's great. That's solid design. That's really good design. And like I said, I would like to see you guys continue that. I'd like to see you guys deepen that. Don't just retread it, make it even better than before.
Haunting loop for which neither of us may ever escape. Huh. Anywho, I'm Herc, and I'm real glad you showed up. I'm looking for a driver. A driver with a prowess for unregulated violence as if they were a younger me. Well, no doubt you've probably heard of my legend, my many outlaw adventures, you know, both in and out of the boudoir. Well, all the stories you heard are true.
However, one small problem with your allies is that awful AI. I don't know why you guys still haven't been able to nail this. I don't know if it's just because you guys have been, like, pushing out Far Cry games like every other year or what, but man, oh man, that AI is bad. I mean, sometimes the AI is helpful, but for the most part, they just keep getting stuck in places. Or they keep shooting at random shit, or you're trying to sneak around and they're running around in front of guys and getting detected, and it's like, what are you doing?
Shit, gotta move!
It just, half the time I just felt like being by myself, especially when I was taking out forts and whatnot, and, you know, the outposts, because it meant that I had to worry less about them and just focus on what I was doing, and it shouldn't feel like that. Honestly, half the time I felt like I was playing with allies from, like, a Fallout game. That's how bad some of the AI was. So, like I said, sometimes they help me out. You know, it's cool that, you know, your ally can pick your ass up. Like I said, that's probably a carryover from something else, from one of the other games, but that is cool, and I do enjoy that. However, most of the time, I'm on the ground, and the person that's with me is, like, running all the way, like, just running into the forest after, like, one particular bad guy who's, like, running away. Instead of coming picking my ass up, it just lets me bleed out in the street. Like, what the hell, dude? So, yeah, I mean, sometimes the AI just doesn't seem to know what it's doing or what's going on. They scream the same lines over and over again at you until you want to punch them in the face, or, you know, crack them in the back of the head with the butt of a rifle. It's just, they're annoying and they're stupid sometimes, and I would love for you guys to really rehaul it. I really would, because you guys do a lot of cool things and great things with the allies, and some of the allies have great stories, and they've got, you know, some of them are great characters.
I really appreciate your help, man. I promise you're gonna love my car, man. It fucking hauls ass, man. All Fast and the Furious style. It's like a fucking boner on 4 wheels, man. I ain't even kidding either. It's like the fastest car in the West. Not even the highwaymen can catch this thing. I mean, David Hasselhoff called me up once, and he was like, yo, between you and me, man, Kit's a fucking bitch. Let me talk about getting your ride. I told him to fucking take a hike, man. That's probably why they still...
But the AI is mind-numbing, and it really does need to get addressed at some point, very soon. If it's not the next Far Cry, it has to be the Far Cry after that. A cool little addition that I enjoyed in this game, once again, it might have been in any other games, but in this particular game, was the expeditions. There's about 7 of them that are unique, that actually let you go to cool areas. You know, areas that are very much different than the environment that you're in. Where this is, you know, the Montana woods / plains. It's just, you know, it's not some city. It doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't have an ocean, doesn't have any of that shit. You can go to other really cool, some of them are iconic, like Alcatraz Prison. Complete these expeditions where you have to sneak in, or you can go guns blazing if you want, to get a particular package and try to get yourself out of there on a helicopter. And it's actually got higher difficulties too, where you at first have it on, you know, the easy, normal level 1 difficulty, and you can get up to that tier 3, 4 difficulty.
I think we're in the clear! Man, I didn't know if La Grosse Patate was gonna make it this time. Good job, Shelly. I'm gonna give you a nice wash in the lube when we get home.
After playing it several times, and it's really cool, and you know, it gets you a lot of materials. If you need to get titanium, or if you need to get circuits or anything else, you know, rare stuff, it's a great way to do it while also being able to check out other areas that are really cool, really fleshed out. Like I said, whether it's the Alcatraz Prison, which is really cool, or like the bayou, or in the middle of the desert, you know, and it helps break up some of that monotony. And these are really great, you know. Continue doing more stuff like that, continue making it deeper, and that's how you wind up getting other people like me, who are a little burnt out on Far Cry for the most part, back to come play Far Cry. You know, as I said before too, you know, on another little side note, bugs and glitches, there's a few of them in here. For the most part, the game is fairly polished, but there are a few bugs and glitches that are hilarious. Here's just 1 or 2 of them. Guns are actually fairly decently well done here. I liked the design of them. However, one thing that I felt like was kind of missing, and they probably started winding down on this a while back, but one thing that kind of was weird to me, is the fact that, like, in Far Cry 3, what made Far Cry 3, with its hunting especially, and its harvesting of fruits and berries and stuff like that, what made it so interesting was that you had to have certain plants, certain rare stuff, you know, rare animal skins, whatever, to build and craft more stuff, to sit there and get more pouches, get more stuff. Here they actually, it's not, there's like 3 or 4 weapons that are like the epic, the high tier, that require like the highest tier of animal skin. That's really about it. You know, to sit there and hold more ammunition, or to hold more, you know, more weapons, or hold anything, there are perks in your perk system. And you get perk points, instead of you leveling up and getting perk points, if you complete challenges, if you complete, you know, other things, whether it's a gun, a gun challenge, or killing a certain enemy challenge, or hunting a certain animal challenge, you'll get perk points for that. And then you can use those perk points to pick out abilities, and then there's certain abilities that you can get over and over and over again to be able to hold more bullets, stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure there's a max level. I didn't actually hit that, even after completing the game. So there's still a lot to sit there and kind of check out and explore, but that's how you'll wind up being able to sit there, like, sort of hold more, and it just makes it feel a little less organic. And I felt like it was a step backwards. You know, like I said, we're with like Far Cry 3, you know, you to get, like I said, better weapons, or to craft ammo pouches, or to get more weapons, you had to go kill other animals. You had to sit there and skin them and then piece all the stuff together, and that was kind of cool. That, like I said, that felt organic. And here, like I said, other than a handful of weapons, most of the stuff you'll craft with just random shit around, and I feel like the crafting system is a little wasted per se. And I know I'm cramming like 5 things in here, but I feel like the crafting system was a little bit weak because of that. You know, you want to emphasize the crafting system, and yet you kind of dumbed it down by making where you don't need certain things, and that to me is a little off-putting. For me, like for me personally, I'm sure there's plenty of people that tell me to shut the fuck up, but like I said, it felt more organic that way. So I think that'll be pretty much it for me on this, guys. I didn't really want to give obviously too many story bits away. I just want to talk about some of the things that I like, what I didn't like, what I like to see improve, what I like, what I'm seeing now, and what I like to see get deepened. And that's what this review here was for. If, you know, depending on what you've seen and what you're hearing here, if it makes you want to go get the game or not, that's cool. If you want to wait, I understand too. This isn't a must-buy for me, but I won't lie, at $40, it's already discounted, so definitely if you wanted to wait until it was discounted a little bit more, like $20, I'd say pick it up, maybe go ahead and enjoy it. It took me about 12 hours, and that was even me doing a lot of the side stuff, so it's not a very long storyline, it's not a very long game. However, it's a fairly decent game. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and give Far Cry New Dawn an 8 out of 10. And it barely gets that because of the things that they've added, as well as the things that I feel are different from Far Cry 4. Like I said, I haven't played Primal, I didn't play 5. But some of the things that I've seen them at least evolve on, I feel like are really well done. And I mean, there are some other small stuff too that I didn't really touch on. Like I said, you know, the storyline was alright, but really what it does here is that you've got fairly good sound design, the world's gorgeous, some of the characters are somewhat interesting. You know, where it faults is, you know, some of the usual small bugs and glitches that are Ubisoft-wise. The fact that it's got an overbloated map with, you know, even though there are organic quests and missions, there's not as much stuff still to do, even though this world is ginormous. You're going to be running fucking 500 meters to get to the next collectible or the next thing, and it's just a little ridiculous. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up here, guys. I will talk to you guys later. I love you guys. I'll see you on the next On The Shelf. Bye now.